Okay, we are live. Jenn De Leon, welcome to the Thoughtful Bro. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Oh my gosh, we are in for a treat today. Okay, so everybody, welcome to the Thoughtful Bro. As usual, I'm Mark Cecil. I'm a writer, I'm an editor, I'm a journalist, and I'm here for, as always, wide-ranging discussions on the storytelling craft. We talk about what makes writers tick, we talk about what makes story tick, and we always have the right amount of thoughtful and the right amount of bro on the Thoughtful Bro. So just a few quick things before we dive into this amazing interview, and trust me, you're going to want to stick around. Every Tuesday, we're live here on A Mighty Blaze at 2 p.m. If you want to ask Jenn De Leon a question, please do so in the comments, and I will try to get to it. For our upcoming schedule, next week, we'll have on the incredible writer Whitney Scherer, whose celebrated debut historical novel, The Age of Light, has won something like a zillion awards. The interview with Whitney is going to be amazing. And then the week after that, which is August 25th, I think, we're going to be on with speculative fiction author Jeff Vandermeer. Some of you may know Jeff. He's sort of a legend in this neck of the woods. He made a book that became a big fat movie with Natalie Portman. So it's going to be amazing. But right now, we are here with Jenn De Leon, who is an all-round delightful person and also a pretty badass writer. So Jenn, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to give a quick intro, and then Jenn, I'm going to ask you to read like the first page of your book. But first, I just want to tell people a little bit about you. Jenn is the author of the debut YA novel, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. It's going to be published next week, a week from today, with Simon & Schuster. She's the editor of a book called Wise Latinas, and she is the assistant professor of creative writing at Framingham State University. She's also a board member at Grub Street, which is one of the largest and best known creative writing centers in the country. That's where I met Jenn. And she's also published in over a dozen literary journals, including the Venerable Plowshares, Iowa Review, Michigan Quarterly Review. The list of hits goes on. Jenn, I'm so happy to have you here. And I guess to start, can you tell us what your book is about?
Sure. First, thank you so much for having me. This is a big honor. And I know. And also, I can't proceed without pointing out the fact that we're wearing the same color. And hey, we did not.
Great minds. Great minds.
Yep. It's just amazing to me. Okay, so Don't Ask Me Where I'm From tells the story of 15-year-old Liliana Cruz, and she's trying to fit in at her new high school, and she's part of the METCO program, which is actually the oldest desegregation program in the country. So she's got boy drama, friend drama, family drama, and she's just trying to make it through. And there's some surprises along the way.
Wonderful. Now, I read the first page or so of this book. I mean, I also read more of it, but when I read the first page of this book, I read the first page and stopped because I'm like, you can't get any better than this. No, I read the first page and I thought to myself, the writer story nerd that I am, and I thought, boy, she's really onto something. I mean, of course, it's like well known that everybody says your first page has to be this and has to be that. It is really true that you have to have a first few pages. But I was just so impressed, and I was just wondering if you could just read maybe the first page for us.
Yeah, totally. Okay. All right, chapter 1. There's no prologue, so this is it. I'm diving right in. Picture it. Me in the middle of making proud choices class. That's sex ed for anyone not born in this century. You know, when you have to get a parent or guardian to sign a yellow paper that says it's okay for you to be learning about all this stuff. Like we didn't already know about sex, but whatever. The guest speaker, Miss Deborah, had just passed out condoms. No big deal. I mean, I hadn't had sex yet, but still, condoms ain't no thing but a chicken wing. My best friend Jade had a bunch of them hidden in her room. But what Miss Deborah was showing us that day were female condoms. I know. Have you ever even seen a freaking female condom? Don't lie. Did you even know they existed? Don't lie. If my mom heard me talking about female condoms, she would say that's some straight up Americana gringa shit. For real.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, in YA, voice is so important, and the voice is just right there. I mean, as you go on in that first chapter, not only do you get that voice, but you get the inciting incident of Liliana getting accepted into the Medco program. You get hints of something darker with her father not quite on the scene. And so I guess, like, again, to be craft nerdy about it, like, I'm wondering where the writing of that first chapter fell into the writing of the book process overall. Like, for example, you could say, oh, I just started in the middle and I didn't know where it was going and I wrote that last. You could say, that's the very first thing I wrote and I loved it from the beginning. You could say I wrote 30 drafts of it with my editor or whatever. I'm just wondering how it came about, well crafted as it is.
Yeah, you are so right about the first page. You know, it's like you hear that, and it is. And by the way, I love craft nerdy. Like, I speak craft nerdy, and I just love it. But so yes, first page. I will tell you, Mark, seriously. Well, two things I want to say. First, I definitely did not start here. I actually wrote the book in third person, set in the 90s, and then I threw the whole thing away. And I started again, and I started with this scene in this voice. And I was thinking, like, what would this particular character, this girl, like, I was hearing her in my mind, like, what would she say? She's telling the story to the reader. She would kind of just grab you by the throat and be like, picture it. And bam, boom, drop you in. And once I got her voice, I felt like, I know this sounds corny, like people say this, but it really felt like I was taking dictation. Like, she was just kind of like going off, and I was like, hold on, wait up. But also, the second thing I want to say is that I knew if I was writing a book for young people, I needed a first page that was basically going to not make them ask for the restroom pass, like if they were reading in school, or not go on their phone, or not be like, Mom, can I help you chop vegetables? You know, it's like anything. I needed to keep their attention. And
So it just had to be what, exciting or
I felt like I needed it to be a little bit like weird and surprising and just something off. Like sex ed, okay, condoms, all right, not bad. Like, we're in the right territory. But I knew, like, that if I went there with female condoms, they would do like a double take, like, hold on, what? And that's what I kind of needed to happen, to have them get to the second page and the third page. And that's just the way I was thinking about it, I guess.
I mean, it's one of the best openings I've read in YA. I loved it, and I think, like, anybody who wants to be a YA author who's kind of interested in, like, what's happening right now in YA ought to read at the very least the beginning of that book and just be like, okay, this is how it should be done, or this is like one great way to do it. Another thing I wanted to ask you is about the title, because so I know it doesn't happen only in YA, but it is a big YA thing that, like, the title is sort of like, could be a statement said by the main character, and it's like a line of dialogue. It's like the voice begins in the title already. You haven't even opened the book and the voice is already present, which is just an amazing effect. And so I'm wondering too about the title, like, did you come up with that, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I'm so bad with titles. I just make, like, my husband come up with the titles for all this stuff. Yeah. But basically with this one, there's a scene later in the book where she's actually taking a creative writing class at 826 Boston in Eggleston Square. And the prompt is write a 6-word memoir. So she writes, "Don't ask me where I'm from." And those are the 6 words, because she's just sick of people asking her at her new school, like, where are you from? Where are you from? Like, where are you really from?
Where are you
So
from?
Yeah, yeah. So once I wrote that scene, I'm like, that's it. That's the title.
Yeah, beautiful. So it went to your agent and your editor like that, because people are always saying, like, oh, don't even bother with your title because the publisher is going to change it anyway. But
Right.
You had that from the get-go.
Yeah. In fact, there were a couple editors. I probably can't name them, but editors who were interested in the book, who said they literally responded to the subject in the email, because it was like, "Don't ask me where I'm from, YA manuscript." And they were like, what? Because people who know.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so good.
Mhm.
Oh my God. All right. So I mean, just like everything is working for this book. It's like everything is working. So I want to go back in time a little bit. You once said to me in a conversation that we had that you feel like a recovering MFA graduate. And this is something I've heard you talk about before, but I think it bears repeating because it's just so interesting that you were sort of more on a adult literary serious kind of New Yorker magazine type of track and you just it wasn't quite working, and then suddenly you sort of saw your lane and you got into it and you started going 100 and never looked back. And I think that like so many writers out there are just thinking about what is my lane, where do I fit in? And by the way, this isn't only authors who haven't been published. There's an author I know, Jenn De Leon. She wrote a book called The Marsh King's Daughter, which became an international bestseller a few years ago. Terrific, female-driven thriller about this woman who, goes out into the wilderness and just becomes this complete wilderness badass. But the point is, Karen had published several books before that that just didn't do as well. And then she just switched into this thriller vein and it just exploded for her. And so I'm just saying, like, finding your lane is not something that like everybody just does at the beginning of their career. Some people publish many books before they find their lane. Yeah. So I want to hear that story from you.
Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness. I didn't know what YA was. Like, I didn't know it was a thing, a category. I was like, oh, if you want to be a writer.
Wait, Jen, speak up a little bit. Speak up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I didn't know what YA was. I didn't know that it was a category. I didn't like get it. And so I just grew up thinking, oh, if you want to be a writer, you have to write adult literary fiction that's super descriptive and a little slow moving and beautiful and interesting. But I basically just went through a phase in my MFA where I tried to write like James Salter, and it was like, oh, if you want to be a good writer, you got to write like James Salter. So I would take like
I mean, I guess.
Yeah, or like what's the other one? Like, I read Francine Prose, and she has this book on writing, and I just read Richard Yates, like all those, like I just was like really deep into those writers, like thinking I have to write like them. And so I would try, and it would be like a page describing like the wallpaper, and it was just so boring. I was like even boring myself, like, and so that's what I mean. Like in the MFA, I mean, it was great in a lot of ways, community, deadlines, exposure to other types of writing. But one thing that I just wish I had had more of was a focus on plot. And we've talked about this, just like what turns the pages, like what is going to get the reader fired up. There's so much competing for their time. Like, what are you going to do to make it worth it for them? So, yeah.
Wow. And then can you just describe for me like that moment, like finding true love, I'm sure, when can you boil it down? Can you be like very Hollywood right now and just like give me that moment when what was it? Was it like a writing exercise, or you woke up and had a dream? Like when was the moment you found YA?
Yes, I will tell you. So I wrote a lot of really bad short stories where there was like this, like, I won't even get into all the bad. Okay. But so I joined VONA. I got into VONA, Voices of Our Nation Arts Foundation. At the time, it was the only workshop for writers of color in the country. So I fly to San Francisco. I'm 26 years old. I take a workshop with Junot Diaz. And I had submitted 2 short stories where there's a teen protagonist, Latina, like basically an iteration of Liliana, but totally like soft boiled. You know what I mean? And Juno was just like really one of the most amazing teachers I've ever had. And one of the things he said was like, who are you writing for? And that just shifted how I wrote. And once I sort of realized like, oh, I don't have to explain every last thing. I can just like say it and state it and be real on the page. Then like the writing kind of cracked open in a new way. So, yeah.
It's
Vote
so
on
great. I mean, aren't we all kind of like waiting for that moment where you find your lane as an artist and you find your audience? I mean, what does that really mean? It means you found your audience, and like, how exciting is that? I want to talk about Vona for a second. I know that you went to Vona, and Juno Diaz, I mean, like, what a mentor to have. That's amazing. But I think, so there's this story of something that happened to you at Vona where you were told, I don't know if it was by Juno or by somebody else, but that you were told to write a letter to your critical self. So can you tell me just what the heck that means, and then how and how it has if it's continued to help you in your creative process?
Yeah, I love how you ask questions because it's true. You're like, what the heck does that mean? I mean, basically, I was such a like craft nerd, you know, even before I like knew stuff, I was like hungry for knowledge on this because I was still in that mindset of like, if I learn enough stuff, then I can be a writer. Just so many issues with that. But anyway, I go and I have my empty notebook and my laptop and like the whole thing. And his approach is just not about like, okay, I'm going to give you handouts and you're going to fill the box and then go home and use those materials. No, it's like he wanted to really help us see differently, you know, like change our vision. So that for like wherever we read, wherever we were, whatever we were revising, we could bring those tools to it. It wasn't like one golden packet. So anyway, the critical self, that was an aspect of it because he was like, look, you guys could get like an MFA in every genre. You can get fellowships, residencies. You can just like have 24 hours a day to write. But if you don't learn to master or to at least deal with your critical self that is on your shoulder, like with a bat, being like, you suck, you think you're a good writer, oh, you're gonna write that sentence? A kindergartner could write a better sentence. You know, just like all that like negative, like the voiceover where you're like, oh
Yes.
yeah, a kindergartner probably could, you know, like you start to go down that road and then you're like, oh, I'm not even gonna write. So his whole thing was like, you better handle that because that is real. And if you don't sort of at least like acknowledge that that's a voice to mute or turn off or shut down, then you're going to have a really hard time. And that was crazy. That was
it. Tell me, so now you are probably, maybe you haven't ever mastered it. I mean, nobody ever really masters the critical self, but you certainly have more weapons in your arsenal. You're more used to dealing with it. How do you do when that little guy, little girl, whoever it is, shows up and starts telling you suck? What do you do at that point?
Oh man, yeah. So, I mean, like you said, I like that. It's like an arsenal. It's like tools, right? I mean, one thing Juno said was that it's helpful to give that little person like a job at some point. So I think his example was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he was like, literally say to that person with the bat on your shoulder. And we're like listening, like, oh yeah. You know, he's like, say to that person, I don't need you right now. I'm going to shut you down because I'm generating, I'm composing a story. But later, when it's time to revise, I'm going to need you. I'm going to need your faculties. I'm going to need you to be sharp. I'm going to need you to be ruthless because in revision, that is like the point. But right now, I'm just trying to get the story down. So back the fuck off. And like, that was kind of like what it was. And I had never heard somebody talk about this before. It was like therapy, you know, I'm like, wow, you can do that. And so other tools are like, you know, just kind of saying to myself, like Annie Lamott, write that shitty first draft. You can always revise. And one thing I tell my students too is like, we're working with words, right? Like they're free. Like, and a notebook and pencil is not that expensive. Like, it's not like we're sculptors and, you know, like if you mess up a sculpture or whatever, a block of stone, you're screwed. It's like, nope.
I love the give them a job to do. That is amazing. It's sort of like when you and I are both parents, and like it also sounds like dealing with like a really like intransigent child, and you're like, I'm gonna give you what you want later, but later. Now you're gonna do this thing, you know. I
Yeah,
love
no,
that.
you're right. Or it's like when they say like if they're a pain in the butt, like around dinner time, like ask them to help you like set the table or something. So then it gives them a job and then they're busy and you like trick them. I
Dude,
hope
it
my
is
son doesn't.
psychological warfare.
It really is. It is.
All right. So another aspect of you as a writer, which is terrific, is so you in your work you talk about race, you talk about class, you talk about social justice issues. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a segue here, but it is going to pay off in a big way. Okay. So at the Muse in the Marketplace, which is the annual Grub Street Confab, it's an amazing conference. It's probably the best of its kind in the whole country. I've been many times, and I went a few years ago, and there was an author there named Meta Wagner, and she wrote a book called What is Your Creative Type? And she identified 5 kinds of creative people. Okay. And so I'm going to read them here. And what I want you to do is I want you to listen for what may or may not describe you. And you can be like a combination of 2 if you don't want to go all in on one. But basically, I thought this was a very interesting argument that or kind of idea that I hadn't heard before, that there's 5 types of writers, 5 types of artists. So the first is A-listers. A-listers want to have an emotional impact on an audience. They crave applause and praise. Okay. Number 2, artisans. Artisans believe in creativity as its own reward, and the process itself is what brings them joy. Game changers, number 3, are driven to break boundaries and create work that has never been seen before. Sensitive souls pour all their feelings into their art, using their creativity to explore their life experiences and achieve catharsis. And finally, activists want their creativity to right wrongs and change the world. So just to review, A-listers, artisans, game changers, sensitive souls, and activists. And me personally, when I read those, I like every description, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm that. Oh, I'm also that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm all of these. But I do think the more you think about it and you think about the other artists that you know, you do start to see that people fall into a certain category. So I have a theory of what category you may belong in, but I want you to answer it for me. Where do you think you belong there?
My first instinct is like that response is what you said, like all the above. But no, I definitely think the activist one, the last one, I feel like using writing as a tool, like as like a torch, as like a catalyst. I love that. But also the emotional one too, like when
The
people,
A-lister.
when people are like, oh, your essay made me cry, or when I read that part about the mother, I cried. Like, I'm not happy they cried, but I am, you know, like it's a compliment. Like I feel like I reached them through words, which is like crazy when you think about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Totally. I mean, I think like in these descriptions, I mean, I didn't pull these directly from the book, but I mean, I think like all artists really want to have an emotional thing. I think the A-lister, I think the big thing about the A-lister is that they got to be number 1, you know?
I'm a middle child, so that makes sense.
But anyway, so I also thought that you were an activist as an artist, and you do have, you want to use your work to bring about change. And so I guess the next question is, what is the kind of change that you want to bring about? Like, what is the impact you're hoping to have?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question. I mean, man, I would love, you know, I have this like somebody asked me like, what does success mean to you with this book?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that long after. I don't remember what I said exactly, but like I feel like if I'm on the T and I see like a young Latina like girl like reading this book, like I will break down. Like just thinking about it makes me like, oh my God. I don't even know. So there's that. But then also you know, I really hope the book like sparks like movement, and movement can be in lots of different ways. It can be school-wide assemblies, conversations, a bulletin board, like one, you know, kid talking to his friend about the issue in the book, you know. It could be, you know, maybe like inspiring a teacher to reach out to her students in a different way, like some movement, some like cause and effect, you know.
That's beautiful. And I know that you've said this many, many times, that this work is the work that you wish that you had, you know? And can you just talk to me about that? Like what, I guess like what is it about this book that you were maybe looking for specifically when you were that age?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I couldn't articulate it at the time, but now looking back, I can see that I was longing for validation. I mean, I definitely felt like a fish out of water in almost every group and room I entered. It really wasn't until later that I realized like other people felt that way too in different ways, you know? So I feel like it would have been great to have a book like this and others, you know, to feel like, oh, like I'm seen, like someone sees me.
Can you remember the first time that you read a book that you felt seen in?
Yeah, it was freshman year in college, and I took a class with Dean Amorati, I remember, and she assigned House on Mango Street and by Sandra Cisneros, and I had never read it, and I remember reading it and seeing some words in Spanish, and that alone was mind blowing. Like, wait, what?
Mm.
You can do that? Like, you can do that? Like, that's crazy. So, yeah, that book was kind of a game changer for me.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. All right, well, I have a few more questions and then and then we'll wrap. But I want to ask you, you I saw an interview on A Mighty Blaze with you a few weekends ago as part of the YA weekend, where you were on with your agent Faye Bender, and Caitlin DeLuey, your editor at Simon and Schuster. And I just almost, to say that I wept tears of envy is like not quite there, but I did almost weep tears of envy. I mean, I like, and I know I'm not trying to say, Jen, that you like have not paid your dues, because you have. I'm not trying to say it was always easy for you, because it wasn't. But you like struck literary gold. I mean, that is just so the A team. Your team is the A team. And I so just one thing that jumped out at me from watching that interview, and anybody, you can go look it up on A Mighty Blaze. It's from the YA weekend, but just search for Jenn De Leon and Faye Bender and YA weekend and everything, and you'll find it. It's such a wonderful interview. One detail, by the way, that I love so much is that Caitlin says she edits in green pen, not red.
Yeah.
So like every edit is like, oh, good, another edit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, but the big thing that that I loved out of that is you said like working with her was kind of like getting 3 MFAs, and this is from somebody who has an MFA. I'm just wondering, like, for those of us who don't have the good fortune of having Caitlin as our editor, boil down the 3 MFAs to like the big lessons. Like, what do you know now because of that experience that you will always bring forward with you?
Yeah. Oh man. She is big on show don't tell. And it sounds so simple. Like, yeah, I've heard that 8,000 times, but I'm telling you, I can't. It's like I just it changed how I write. And I already felt like I was a visual writer, you know, like and but she was just really big on like opening up, cracking open phrases that were abstract and making them concrete, you know, like and again, it's something you learn early on in craft wise and as a writer, and I teach it all the time, but it's hard to see your own work with those eyes sometimes. So that was huge, just making every sentence like as vivid as possible. And then she was really big on um, like substituting moments where I was getting a little authorial for, you know, making it, grounding it much more in a teen's space and world, things like that. I mean, there's so much I learned from her threading. So, like taking different subplots and really threading them throughout. Like, it versus like having them be like chunked out or like it'd be like 30 pages and it's like she put in little notes like, you know, this is a good spot for Liliana to get a text from Jade or something. And she just was carrying all of that in her head and marking it as she was reading. And so that's something I think I'll take moving forward, is just kind of considering like the balance, like of the ecosystem, like, because that's real life. Like you're not like, I'm with this friend. And then you go like 6 weeks, like, and you're like, now I'm with this friend. And it's like, no, like you're living your life. You're getting texts and like, all this kind of stuff.
I love that phrase, ecosystem. I mean, that's just such a beautiful way to describe the kind of like immersiveness of any fictional world. Another thing that I loved when I heard you talk to Caitlin was you said that you went through many rounds of revisions, and like something would like disappear from the book, and then you'd turn in a revision, and then she'd be like, oh, hey, like, remember that thing from like 2 drafts ago that you, Jen, had like sort of forgotten about, but she knew it. And there was this, it just seemed like there was this moment, and like, what good fortune for you, like to have an editor who almost like knows your book and remembers your book even more than you do in certain ways.
Yeah. I think that's a real blessing. I mean, that I landed with her. She there's no one like her. Like the day that the week that we signed with her, she sent me flowers.
Oh,
like a bouquet of like a big bouquet of flowers with a note, and it was like, welcome to the Athenaeum family. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, she sends my kids Christmas gifts.
oh.
And I'm not saying this to be like, look at my editor, but it's like, she's old school,
Yeah.
like she really is, like, and not just because she handwrites, edits, and everything's UPS, nothing's digital, she's old school in that sense of like, I mean, I don't know, I think there's an element of trust, and because of that, I'm able to go deeper with the work. I mean, she's figured out like the secret sauce, and she, she's got it. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah. I mean, it couldn't have happened to a better person, honestly. I mean, no, you're that way. I mean, you're old school. You're so generous. You're so thoughtful. And I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. Anyway, but so I want to like wrap here on this. So first of all, the question is, do you have an ideal reader? And I think that you, more than most writers, sort of do have like a very specific reader in mind. So first of all, could you describe that ideal reader if you agree that you have one?
Yeah. I mean, it's like Liliana, like,
yeah.
Like to me, I'm like, what can I write for you to read next? Like, it's like, I want to like fill her bookshelf kind of.
Yeah.
I was a teacher forever, so I'm thinking of my girls, like they deserve like books where they see themselves reflected. But then again, it all goes back to Vona. When I was there, one thing Juno said was like, when people asked him, who do you write for? He was like, I write for my 6 best friends and the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, when he is deciding what to explain on the page, when he's deciding like, who is this story for? Who's it going to make laugh, and who's going to get it? Like, it's his 6 best friends, but it's also the rest of the world. So it's like, yeah, this is for like Liliana's in the world, but I'm also aware that I want other people to like pull the curtain and be able to like see into this world. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it does do that. And so then I guess like, so my final question for you is, so let's imagine this Liliana-esque reader. She, there's tens of thousands of them out there, I know. And so they are reading this book and they close the book on the last page. Describe for me the ideal feeling that they have. Like if you could have them walk away with a certain kind of feeling from that book, put it into words if you can, what that feeling is.
Yeah. I want them to feel lifted up, I want them to feel proud of where they come from. I want them to be like, you know what? Ask me where I'm from.
Boom!
I'm gonna tell you. And you're gonna listen.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Like to have that aura, to have that cape and be like, I'm going in the world with that. That would be great.
Oh, that is awesome. I want that cape.
Yeah, right?
All right, well, Jen, we're gonna wrap. Hold up the book one more time. It's called Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. It is available next week, but you can buy it now, right?
Yeah, I'm told it's at the Barnes & Noble in Framingham right now, like a whole table.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Because it was supposed to come out in the spring, but it got delayed.
Yeah, it got bumped a bunch of times because of the Rona, but here we are.
Here we are. Here we are. It's an amazing book. This is an exciting debut author, Jenn De Leon. Get in on the ground floor. Say you found out about her before she becomes the most popular writer in the world. Okay? You heard it here on The Thoughtful Bro. Jenn De Leon is where it's at. We'll be back next week with Whitney Scherer, the like ultra decorated historical fiction author. And so that's going to be super exciting. Then Jeff Vandermeer the week after that. We're here every Tuesday at 2 live. Jenn De Leon, one last time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye.